So here I've got if you look at the get status feedback, you'll notice that I've made a modification. This file sums.php, Git knows about it, it's under version control. I've added a new line, you'll see. So it says it's been changed relative to a commit point, but hasn't been added. And then I've got an untracked file that's junk.txt. And hopefully I've got a GUI. Yeah, I don't know if this is, I don't know if you can see this too well. But again, there's a couple, even on a Unix box, if you run X Windows, there's a couple nice utilities. There's Git GUI and Git K. I don't use them that much, but they are kind of nice to see what's going on. If you'll notice up here, in the upper left-hand corner, you've got this junk.txt. That's a file that I haven't added. I haven't staged it. So it's saying it's an unstaged change. This has some staged changes. If you'll look what's the difference, it will tell you that's the new line. And here, if you want to add you can actually do the commit here. So hopefully this gives you an idea. I don't know if at this point, if you're new to Git, I don't know if I want you to get all caught up in -A or whatever. Just get the idea that there are unstaged changes, there are staged changes, and then just straight commits.
Can you explain the difference between an unstaged change and a staged change? What's the relevance?
Let's see. Well, let me try to go. Well, yeah, I've got a slide on that, so I'll cover that. And hopefully, and this here we even have, and hopefully this will address this to some degree. If you diff things, there are three. Because you've got these three states, you've got unstaged changes, staged changes, and actual commits. You can get diffs. You can find the difference between, say, your unstaged changes and head, which is the commit. You can get diffs between your unstaged changes and the staged changes, and you can find differences between the commits head and the stage. So, I mean, until you start working with it, it's kind of tricky. So at this point, I don't want you to get too wrapped up in this. You just got to be aware that there are these three states, and Git is really kind of rather unique in that situation. So if you use, so here, what I did here, I went back in and I've got an unstaged change to sum, but here I've got a staged change to sum, and that will show me, depending on what, that'll show me the differences in them. So, and I think I've got an explanation here. If you download the presentation, hopefully it's legible, that kind of describes that. Now, here's just kind of my advice in terms of working with, I think the stage, I think in many cases it's called the index. But here are my kind of recommendations. At least when I develop new code, or if I'm working on pretty simple bug fixes, and you just know it'll work, or you're pretty confident it'll work, just use a git commit -a and -m. Just don't even worry about the stage, just commit it straight in there. If this is, if you're adding 2 + 2, and you know it'll work, just go ahead and commit it. Don't worry about the stage. Now, at least for me, I have found, so I'd say 80–90% of the time I don't use the index, I don't use the stage at all. But it has, a couple times, it has been useful. Like if I'm working on a pretty complex bug fix, where I'm really kind of feeling my way through the code, and I don't, like I can fix maybe a little part of it, but there's this other part that I need to fix as well. And this is like, it's an all or nothing commit. You're either going to fix this bug or you're not. It's kind of nice to stage the changes, and then when you're confident that everything works, you can go ahead and commit it all. So, again, I wouldn't worry about the stage too much. Yes?
Can you roll back something you've staged?
Yes, certainly. Yeah.
Because it's not committed.
No. even after you commit, you can take things out. So yeah, I mean, that's the nice thing about the stages. You can pull things back, you can, so yeah.
Like you try to make a change and it failed, and so. you-
Right. Right, yeah, so that is, I mean, I do think it is useful. Most of the times I don't use it, but, that's it. As far as seeing this, and I should check and see the rules. So I think I'm okay on time. Now let's see in diffs visually. Again, I tend to use just regular Linux boxes, and sometimes they run X Windows, sometimes they don't. I've used TKDiff and Compare. I've used a lot of nice things, like on Windows, there's a very nice diff utility. If you've used Tortoise SVN, there's a very nice diff utility there. Pretty much what you would expect. Now, if you are using a Unix-based system, you'll want to, you can indicate what diff tool you're using. Now for me, sometimes I'll work on, say, a staging server or even a production server. And if you want to, but your production server, say, would not have X Windows or anything like that. But if you still want to use a nice diff tool, I would recommend using VimDiff. Unfortunately, using VimDiff, the diff colors they don't look very good out of the box, so if you want to see a nice visual representation of the difference. I've got a blog post here that talks about how to, and you have to go into your VimDiff or just your Vim configuration file to set up some nice colors. But to use a diff tool is pretty straightforward. Now, what you can do, you can diff if you want to diff against the stage, if you want to diff against head, if you want to find differences between, two versions 20 commits ago, you can do that. There's the diff and the diff tool are very powerful and very flexible. This is one thing. It's not really a very elementary. If you're just starting with Git, you may not run into it, but I think it's kind of an interesting thing. I've used this myself, and it's kind of useful. It's called bisect. And what it is, it's a function where, say that and in terms of just working on your commit habits or your work habits, at least for me, I try to do a lot of commits. Whenever something more or less works, I commit it. I don't wait. I mean, so typically during a day, I'll have, 20 commits a day or something like that. And for me, it makes it easier to back things out. But at least for another way that's very good is that it enables me to find bugs pretty well. And there's a nice little feature in Git called bisect, which it helps you to find bugs in your code. Like, let's say that you've got, a bug showed up today in production, and you don't know where that bug came from. You have no idea where it got introduced. What you can do is, let's say that you roll back to, say, a month ago. You know it wasn't in production a month ago, and you can find a commit from a month ago that did not have that bug. What you can do is, if you give it that starting commit point and that ending commit point, Git will essentially automatically help you bisect, go from the starting commit point to the ending commit point. You'll say, okay, let's try this middle commit point. Was the bug in there? And you test it, and no, it's not there. And so